I'm so excited to share this episode with you. Delilah has been working with me as a client for over 3 years, and I have just watched her transform and grow and blossom over the past 3 years, and vice versa. She has watched me transform in my own entrepreneurial journey as a coach over the past years as well. So we had so much fun recording this episode. But before I get into that, I want to let you know that I am co-hosting a retreat called Soul on Fire. And the whole purpose of this retreat is to help women to light their souls on fire so that they're living in passion and purpose and they step into that thing they feel called to do. For some, it might be writing the book or recording the song. Maybe it's starting that nonprofit organization. Maybe it's healing so that you're open to being in a healthy relationship again. It can be different for everyone. And for some women, maybe they're not sure what it is. Maybe they have lost connection with their desires, but they just know that there has to be more to this life and I'm feeling really stuck. So we actually help you identify what it is that you really want to do. And then we also help you build the confidence to believe that it's possible for you. And we help you to step into that higher version of yourself. And then we also hold you accountable and give you strategies so you can start taking action and making it a reality in your life. So aside from the 3 nights that we'll be staying at this beautiful lake house in Delta, Utah, where we're just secluded and doing the deep work and healing and transforming together, we want to make sure you have a lasting impact. And so we've attached a group coaching program to this retreat so that you have both group and individual coaching sessions online before we meet in person and also following up after the retreat to make sure that you are taking action and moving forward. There are still a few spots left. Please click on the link in my notes if you want more information. There is the webpage that gives you all the details about the retreat, and we can get on a clarity call to answer all of your questions about the retreat. Welcome to the Renaissance Achiever with Sarah Fui. Today we have special guest Delilah Thompson. I'm so excited to have you here. Delilah is a writer, artist, designer, lifestyle, and wellness influencer, brand founder and podcast host of the Self-Care Diaries, amazing podcast she just launched. Go check it out. She combines her passion for self-care, mental health, style, beauty, and wellness with her background in tech, corporate strategy, user experience design, and project management to help educate and empower girls and women to level up their lives and step into the best version of themselves, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I have known Delilah for several years now. I want to say Delilah first started working with me as a client 3.5 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
I have watched this transformation of you, and you, on the other side, vice versa, has watched a transformation of me as well as we have stepped into different career roles and also our own personal development. So it's been so cool to be on this journey with you. And thank you for being here on the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Yes, this is my first podcast that I'm on, and I wouldn't want to be on anyone else's. I feel like you have just seen this whole journey for me, so I'm so excited to be here. And I'm such a fan of you, of the podcast. So yeah, it just feels so good.
Delilah has been a major support to the Renaissance Achiever. Whenever I'm wondering, is anyone even listening? Does anyone care? And Delilah will shoot me texts and be like, that episode was so good, or I'm listening to all of them. And you always need 1 or 2 cheerleaders that help you to keep going and know that what you're doing is worth it when you're in the beginning of your journey. And Delilah is that for me. So thank you, Delilah. And Delilah has a really interesting story. I've watched you step into corporate and then step out of corporate. And that was a really big transition that you had to make last year. Do you want to share a little bit of that journey, what that has been like for you and what you're doing now?
Yes. And with the podcast and speaking it into the void, I totally get that now. I feel like you are the one who inspired me to have a podcast. And so now I'm doing it. I feel the same way where I'm like, am I just talking into the void sometimes? And you just need those 1 or 2 people to be like, yeah, this is helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, even if it's one person listening, it's worth it, right?
Even just my most recent transition into starting a podcast and my brand, a lot of that has just come from listening to your podcast and all the stories you tell about the thread. I'm like saying it wrong, but
The soul threads, yeah.
Soul thread, aligned timing, things like that. But yeah, we first started working together when I was joining corporate America. So I think it was almost 4 years ago, and um, we started when I had just finished my internship and I had my return offer. Looking back, that was such a sign that it kind of wasn't for me already. I had a terrible internship experience there. And it was just such a big transition going from college to corporate America. And so that was kind of the first thing that we worked on together was navigating that transition. And then after a couple of years, we worked together navigating the transition out of there. So I feel like that's kind of such a full circle moment.
Yeah, so full circle. I was realizing that. I was like, wait, I watched you transition out, but I also watched you transition in. And can we talk about what you just said? That there were signs that this wasn't right for me because I had a horrible internship, and yet you still took the job. And I think you're not alone in making choices like that because you're young and eager, and this is a great company. This is a great income. I should take the job, right? Why? Why did you do it? When you had those signs? And how are you feeling about it now looking back in retrospect?
That's a good question. So, for why I took the job, I would say it definitely was still my dream. I would say there's like so many different reasons why I left, not just because of my team or things like that. I think there were just like larger goals that I wanted, and I kind of knew the life I wanted for myself. Working a 9 to 5 wouldn't really allow me to have that lifestyle and live that life that I want. But definitely, when I look back on that internship, I would say I'm proud of myself. I think my internship was weird because I was in a weird situation. I look at the people that I was surrounded by, and a lot of them just weren't super happy. And so it wasn't great for me, but it still was a dream I had. And I was so interested in tech. And so I don't look back on my experience, even working there full time, as something that I wish I didn't do. If anything, I'm really proud of myself for leaving and kind of leaving on a high note in a way. But no, it was something that I was always super interested in. Definitely, I'd always worked at startups in the past. So I did want to have that experience at a big company, especially one like Meta. I kind of just wanted to see behind the curtain and just see how a big company runs things because I kind of knew that in the back of my head, I probably want to have my own company or something one day. So I'm very happy about that. But also, the more I look back on it now, the more I can definitely see how a lot of those things were not okay. Just seeing the level of how unhappy everyone was, some of the toxicity in the way that they manage things, just saw that like people weren't happy. And that kind of really bleeds into every aspect of a company culture.
That was the big indicator, the fact that everyone was
Yes,
unhappy around you,
everyone,
that if I end up here long enough, I'm going to be unhappy, right?
100%.
But I love what you said that you don't regret the experience because that was a big dream of yours and you just wanted to see how does this huge corporation run on the inside? What is that like to be a part of it? And there are valuable skills I'm sure that you learned from it, that you received, and it was part of that journey, that stepping stone, right? Sometimes the soul threads aren't shiny and fun and pretty. They're just like, ooh, you have to go through this experience because it's leading you to the next. And then if you didn't take it, you would always wonder, what if, or I should have, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And it was an experience. There was a time where I really loved it and I was learning a lot. And then there's also a time where you kind of know it's time to leave. And something that I also learned is it's okay to grow and evolve and to want different things. And I
Yeah.
think that was also just a really good lesson that I learned from it. It's not a failure because you want to try something else. I'll always have that experience and I'm so grateful for it. And it's okay to grow, evolve, change, and want to pivot, want to try different things. It also taught me my self worth, my value, my identity isn't just like this one thing or one thing that
Mhm.
I'm good at. It's really me and whatever I want to do with it. And it taught me also how to listen to myself. And I think that really started my journey with my intuition.
Your intuition, which is so interrelated with self-care because it's your self-care is literally just listening to your intuition of what is it that I really need. And sometimes that can be confusing. I think of how many people are probably at that company and will never leave. You probably have seen them even though they're miserable. And it's because they're so trapped in the how can I let go of this title at this big company or this salary? And they're so attached to these things, even though they're so unhappy and they can't see any other option for themselves. right?
I
That's so
see that
hard.
all the time, and I can't even imagine because I'm sure for you, you probably saw it from a mile away. I feel like it usually takes me 6 months since the time you suggest something for it to seep in, and now I see that so much with other people, and of course, I know how hard it is, how hard that journey was for me, and again, there's not really much you can say. It's something that you have to kind of come to on your own, but yeah, of course, I noticed that in so many people. I think it also taught me just not to have whatever dream you have on a pedestal because I feel like when I was younger and even my internship, I really looked up to working there and the people that worked there. And I thought that everyone who was there was probably so much smarter than me and just like unicorns and all this stuff. And then you get there and you realize, yes, there are a lot of smart people and everyone is smart though in their own way. At the end of the
Yes.
day, it's still a corporate company. And, you know, when you get to know people from everywhere and you realize, yeah, these people aren't necessarily as smart. They're smart
They're
and
not
talented, but
anything special. Yeah,
exactly
they're just people.
talented people everywhere.
Yes, yes. I am so glad you mentioned that because there's so many times we put people on a pedestal, and I in any area, not just in corporate or tech. I mean, even artists, creatives, you think, wow, they're so amazing. And when you really get down to it, they're just people. And there
Mhm.
are different levels of talent and intelligence. But I think the biggest factor is belief in self and grit and going and doing the thing. That's what sets them apart. And you could have that when you believe in yourself and you put in the work. Actually, anybody can have these things. And
Yeah.
I don't think people realize that. And I do it myself too, put people on a pedestal all the time. And then you meet them and you're like, oh, like I can hang with these people, right?
I think anytime I have a goal or a dream, that's something that I've been thinking about a lot because I will put things on a pedestal, whether it's starting a podcast or doing this or doing that. I'm like, I can't do it. The people who have it, you know, they just have it. And I have to remind myself, they're no different from you. If you put the work in, you might have not seen their first episode or things like that, but same thing. Don't put that on a pedestal because they're no different than you. You can do that. So I feel like I'm constantly having to remind myself that.
Yeah. And it really comes down to your own self image and doing that work too. What is it within us that feels like we're not good enough or we're not capable or we're not worthy? And continuing to peel back those layers of, yes, I can. And yes, I should.
Yes. No, and I think
Yeah.
that was another thing. I did gain a lot of confidence. If I didn't work there, I'd probably wonder what if, because I think it
Hmm.
took me going to that experience and that situation where I was surrounded by all these people who were supposed to be super smart and all of these things. And once I looked behind the curtain, I'm like, they're no different from me, no different from you. And so I was thinking, you know, yes, I'm learning, but also, why should I be listening to you in a sense? I have my own things that I can add, and I feel like it gave me a lot of confidence. So that's another aspect that I'm grateful.
Can we speak a little bit about your experience as a woman in tech and in corporate? Because I think that's a big deal too, of feeling like, do I belong here? Am I good enough? And realizing, yeah, actually, I do belong here. I am smart enough. Do I really need to listen to you? I know you struggled with that. So can you tell us a little bit about that? I think a lot of women would relate.
Yes, it's something that I haven't even been able to fully conceptualize myself about that experience, but 100%. I felt like as a woman, I was constantly being underestimated. People would steal my ideas. Men who were, you know, half as talented, had half as much experience, would, I don't know, just take up these big rooms. And yeah, I definitely felt like I was put in positions sometimes where I felt like I constantly had to prove myself. And I felt like I don't have to prove myself. If I can't have a seat at this table, I'm just going to make my own table. I don't want to spend all of that time and energy feeling like I have to constantly win over approval or do this and
Mm.
that. I felt like it honestly just detracted a lot from the time that I could be spending focusing on my work. And so just going where you're valued. I remember one of the things that I discussed when I was dealing with burnout after, and looking back on my experience was the idea of fitting in versus belonging. And I felt as a woman, it was always just trying to fit in instead of that belonging. And I felt like I had really great ideas. I was a really hard worker, but I constantly felt underestimated, passed up for opportunities, always kind of
Undervalued.
exactly. All of the things that they wanted me to be was more of a caretaker. I constantly felt like I was a
Uh,
babysitter. They would
uh,
ask me to take notes in meetings and just all of those little
they wanted
things.
you to be a secretary, and you're like, I actually have some killer ideas. Let
Yes.
me take the mic here.
Exactly. And as a project manager, my job and a workflow owner, my job was constantly problem solving and designing solutions and then executing. And I would have so many moments where these men that I had worked with, more so leadership. And I just want to preface this 90% of the men that I worked with, super nice, didn't care. I think part of it is like unconscious bias
Yeah.
of believing that like women aren't like interested in these things or women aren't great leaders or things like that.
I mean, we're constantly making prejudgments just by someone's appearance. We all do it, right? And so giving them the benefit of the doubt that they don't know what they don't know. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that because we're not here to diss on men. And I wanted to open that up to maybe the advice that you would give them so that they can create that awareness in themselves of if they have these possible biases towards women in their workplaces.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think empathy, maybe not empathy is the right word, but just compassion, maybe putting yourself in the other person's shoes or just communicating. I think the ratio was 8 to 2. For every 8 men, there were 2 women. So I would constantly just be in Zoom calls where it'd be my little square, one other square, and then 8 men. Something that was helpful was just staying true to myself and just noticing and having that awareness of when I felt pressured to change or when I felt underestimated and just acknowledging that, that's that person's beliefs, but it doesn't change who I am. Healing and being able to have the opportunity to change your environment, which is what I did, is honestly
Mhm.
such a blessing and such a privilege. And I know not everyone is like able to do that, but fortunately, like I did have that opportunity. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're like, I got to get out of this environment.
Yeah.
And there is, aside from the subconscious bias, it's just the work environment and work culture
Exactly.
itself that wasn't great. So it wasn't just that. I mean, you went through the huge
Exactly.
layoffs in tech where there was just unexpected. People didn't know if they were going to keep their job or not. There was a lot of fear and competition, and
Exactly. And
it
I
was
think part
rough.
of
Yeah.
that exactly what you're saying. That wasn't the only reason why I felt like
Yeah.
that environment wasn't conducive to growth. It was also because a lot of the people who were in those leadership positions, I felt that they weren't happy. And I'm sure probably as a result is why I felt a lot of that projection and limitations placed on me. And that ultimately was one of the reasons why I left is I looked at the leadership and like roles and what I would be doing. And I was like, I don't want my boss's job or my boss's job. And a lot of these people seem very miserable and unhappy. And I'm sure that's probably why they're, upset or stressed and things like that. I saw that they didn't have the job security and I didn't want to be in the same place that I am 20, 30 years later,
Yeah.
knowing that, it's different when you're single and you're young and you don't have a family to like take care of and support. But I saw these people who, were very stressed and worried about their job for good reasons because they're probably supporting a wife and a family. And I can't even imagine how that felt. So, yeah, maybe they had a bad attitude or something like that sometimes. And I didn't feel like it was like the best environment for me to grow at some point once I like stopped learning. But I think the bigger factor was that it just wasn't in a place that I wanted to be at. It was just a stepping stone, and it's okay to be a stepping stone sometimes.
Yes, it's okay. And it gives you mad credentials because the society we live in still likes to look at those corporate titles and those big name companies like Meta and be like, oh, you're legit, right?
Yeah,
Even though on the inside, it's all a facade. You're like, yeah, I was legit before this and I'll be legit
100%.
after, but it's part of that
Yes.
resume.
I went to a very small school, and I think that that was also a part of really wanting a name on my resume as well, which kind of makes
Mhm.
sense. I think also for myself to prove that, hey, I am good enough and smart enough. I felt like my college, the standard wasn't super high. And I wanted to be at a place where I felt like I was surrounded by smart people who were passionate. I always have that on my, not even on my resume because hopefully I never need a resume again, but I have that kind of just personal, it was a big accomplishment for myself, I felt. So I'm proud of
Absolutely.
myself.
Like, I need a little prestigious stamp of
Yeah.
approval for myself, even if I'm not using it for external validation, right?
And if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have met you. And so our journey wouldn't have started. So I feel like, so many good things kind of came
Soul
about that.
threads. It was all soul threads, right? So you mentioned that you had experience in startups. Tell me a little bit about that because you started this journey really young. I
I
think,
did.
how old were you when you worked with the startups? Tell me that whole story in detail.
So, for reference, just backing up a little bit, I am a first generation college student. So, neither of my parents graduated high school even.
Wow.
And yes, and they are such hard workers. And I went to a very small school in Manhattan, in New York City. It's called Pace. And in New York City, we're surrounded by NYU, Columbia, all of the Ivy Leagues. They send their kids here for like internships in the summer. And so my school really stressed from my freshman year that the value you're getting at this school is also just being in New York. It's in the financial district, it's right next to Wall Street. So they really stress that like one of the best things is that you have internships. I remember even when I was a freshman, I would be in some of my extracurricular classes with some older kids, and they already had 4 or 5 internships. And so that was
Wow.
just a culture. I love my school now. I think, especially now that I've had a good job to kind of back it up a little bit. But I love that everyone at my school was kind of definitely a young hustler. I felt like it was either people who were very smart, but didn't have the money to go to NYU or Columbia because we do a great scholarship program for that, or people who were not very smart but had the money to go and not smart
Mhm.
enough to like, get into NYU or Columbia. So I loved my college for that. I was surrounded by all this like energy of like the kids that I was with, like all these like hustlers. Also, you're in like FIDI, so you're surrounded by people just like coming and going from their jobs all the time. So it was a very like nice, productive environment.
Very
And
influential environment.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I remember I didn't want to go to the school at all because I had gotten into some quote unquote more prestigious schools. I was a little unsure about going in the city. I kind of wanted that stereotypical college campus vibe. And I was like, oh, I'll live in the city after. I don't want to go there now. From my first day there, I remember after my parents dropped me off, they were like, just try it out. If you want to change, you can change. After that first night there, I knew this is for me. So
Wow.
yeah, long story short, they make you take all these different classes. One is specifically for finding a job. When you're a freshman or first semester sophomores, you have to have a resume, a cover letter, a LinkedIn account. And at the time, I hated this class. Now I'm like, thank God, because those are the things that are difficult. Sitting down with a resume, a cover letter, making your LinkedIn for the first time. We had to reach out to 3 people for informational interviews. And just coming from Pace and competing against all these big name schools,
Mhm.
it seems like everyone's more prepared than you. Everyone knows what's going on. So I applied to a bunch of places, obviously didn't get anything. My mom is very much like if you want something, you can have anything you want. You can just figure it out.
Everything
Just
is figure
literally
outable. I love
literally
it.
just
You got
reach
that
out
from
to
your
people.
mama.
100%. And I think even from that class where you had to reach out to a bunch of people to try to get an informational interview, it's so cringe, but it really helps with your kind of rejection sensitivity. So, how I got
Yes.
my first actual internship, because I initially wanted to go into finance. I studied economics. It was very hard to get my foot in the door. And so I followed a couple finance Instagrams, and one of them was Miss Dow Jones. And it was this woman who, all of them were very male dominated. And even just in my personal life, when I would talk to men or boys in my grade, it was very much this idea of finance is so complicated. Like you wouldn't know. And I
Mhm.
think now we've kind of democratized that a lot more, but it was definitely something where it was like, oh, like you wouldn't understand, this is too complicated for you. And all the men who worked in finance thought their jobs were like super complex and like complicated. And so that made me like want to learn about it even more because I'm like, okay, if it's so hard, like tell me. I had student debt, I'm ready. And so when I found this woman who was just being herself and brought this female aspect. It wasn't a woman trying to like assimilate into male culture. I really felt that confidence through the screen of like, you can add value and do whatever you want. And I thought she was just a boss woman. So as I'm like reaching out to people, I messaged her and I was like, hey, do you ever need like an assistant? And she was like, okay. And I knew that like I'm a hard worker. I was like, okay, I just need to get my foot in the door. I've always been so fascinated by business. I've been very mission driven for women and educating people, especially since my family was a first generation college student. So I met her and I started as her unpaid intern assistant. And we worked together for over a year. And over that course, I began running all of her day-to-day operations. And we became
Wow.
like super close friends. I'm still close with her today. So that
And
was kind
she's
of my
big
first
now.
big thing. She's huge. I mean,
She's
even just over the
huge.
course of as we started, when we started, I think she had like less than 50,000, which is still a lot. But I'm sure
Hmm.
today she has well over 250,000 or something. And she partnered with like Goldman Sachs,
Wow.
Elvest, all of these cool things. And yeah, she was just a boss woman. And I was only 19 and she was 26. And now I'm 26 and I realize what a baby she
That's
was. But
that's crazy. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like 26.
to
I
me
was
at
not doing
19,
that stuff at 26. Yeah.
literally, to me at 19, I thought she was an adult and she had her life figured out and all of this stuff. But no, she was like the coolest person ever. And I think getting the opportunity to just show my skills and kind of do whatever I want with it and yeah, became her right hand gal. And yeah, that was just very inspiring to see. Talk about
That's so
representation.
cool.
I
So
loved
cool.
it. And I loved
Women
it
in
so
finance. Yes.
yes. And so I loved it so much that I felt like we kind of learned finance, did it over it that really introduced me to operations and like, oh, I love behind the scenes of like what actually makes a company work and all of that problem solving and things like that. So that's kind of how I got my start. And it took me into operations. I left to pursue more summer internships. That's what led me to Meta. And then I did operations, I did user experience design, project management, workflow ownership, which is like all about operations and things like that. And then,
All the
yeah,
things my brain does not comprehend. Systems.
and I was just so comfortable being behind the scenes. And then once I got a little bit more comfortable at Meta, I was like, hey, I've kind of been using all of these skills to like pour into people. I think through all those things with confidence, I was like, what happens if I just poured into myself and
Mm.
kind of allowed myself to be seen and I was the one. I think I just got so tired of being told what to do in all of these situations that I was like, hey, I kind of think I have enough experience and have been around enough leaders to maybe like give this a shot myself.
Why do I need a middleman? Just put my ideas out there directly. So, can you explain a little bit what you're doing now since you've left Meta and you're still using these skills?
Yes, so that is a good question. What am I doing?
You're doing a
um,
lot.
what am I doing? So, yes, essentially, I think after being at Meta for about 3 years from my internship to when I left, I it was like a crash course in everything that I needed to learn to run a company, how to act in a professional setting. I learned so much. And in the process of that, I completely burned myself out and I had really neglected my personal life for those 3 years. But again, I think that was a season. That was a season of just learning. I had been investing in my career and learning and watering that plant that the past almost a year since I left has just been a journey of like self discovery, learning, and now pursuing these new goals where I'm like, how can I take what I've learned, what I'm interested in, and make a career where I can kind of think long term that has longevity. And so that's what I've been doing. Yeah.
Combining all of the different sides of you as a Renaissance achiever and how can I bring this together to niche,
Yeah.
right?
And tying it back to you, one of the things that have really helped kickstart that journey was, I mean, first of all, our conversations. You would see me so burned out every week. And I think you're one of the first people. I was so in denial that things just like weren't working out and it wasn't what I thought it would be. And that I wanted to move on. And so not only did you help me realize that, but then you also either gave me the book or recommended the book, Everything is Figure Outable. And I think the first page, it's her calling her dad and being like, hey, I'm leaving my job literally like on Wall Street, a prestigious job. I won't be using my college degree. And a couple days after I read that, I really decided I'm going to leave. And I called my dad and I told him, like, hey, I don't think I'm going to use my degree anymore.
How did dad react? Can we share that?
Yes, I mean, it's such a personal journey. And I think with our work together, I was focused on just listening to my intuition that I first decided to go on leave. I was so burned out, it started to affect my physical health. And I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell anyone until after I submitted those papers because I didn't want to be talked out of it. And I knew I just needed that space to rest and to think clearly and kind of just make that space for exploration. And my dad reacted in a perfect way. I think that
He could see that you needed that break
100%.
too.
I think also when you make the decision for yourself, it's easier for your parents to support it versus if I went in there and was kind of looking for his permission. As
Yeah.
parents who work really hard and just want their kid to have a stable life and the highest probability of things working out, I think it would have been hard for him to be like, yeah, do it. I don't think you'd want that responsibility on yourself. But since I'd already made that decision, and just felt a little bit of guilt because my parents didn't have that much money, and especially my dad. And I think he's still paying off like my college debt. And I'm still paying off some of my student loans too. There was a guilt about working so hard and going after this and then not using my degree. So I think
Yeah.
he handled it beautifully and he believed in me. And it just made me feel good that I could be honest with them with where I'm at. Because I know they were proud. They loved telling people that their daughter worked
Yeah.
at Facebook.
Yeah.
So it's
You
sweet.
said so many good things I want to rewind on. First of all, can we reframe that you're not using your degree? Because you absolutely are using your degree, just like how you are using your experience at Meta, right? You wouldn't even
Yeah.
have done the internship with Miss Dow Jones or created the LinkedIn if it weren't for this degree. And so all of that was necessary. And I think people don't realize that just because you're not doing the traditional career that would have came from that degree, it doesn't mean it was a waste. That every experience you have and that you learn upon, it was worth it. And it's
A hun
building you
Yes, I'm
towards a future
absolutely
place.
using my degree and all of that
Yeah.
experience. I think it was more of just that breakup with that traditional path.
Yeah.
I think when you
Yeah.
come from humble beginnings, you want so bad to just be normal, and you try so hard to be normal that then you get to that place and you're like, "Wait, why am I trying to
Be
be normal?
miserable
I
like
kind of
everyone
want,
else.
right? I want an extraordinary life." And so I think it was
Yeah.
just breaking up with that and kind of acknowledging that, hey, this safe path, what looks like traditional success. It's not what I want to pursue anymore.
Yeah. And letting go of what I thought, ooh, this is something that my sister and I talked in our masterclass about, and she worded it perfectly. She calls it false wants versus true desires. And it's a false want because, ooh, we're supposed to want this thing. Society made it look shiny and fun and exciting. And then you get it and you're like, ooh, this is not aligned for me at all. And that's the false want, like that dream. But then the true desire is what is right for my soul. What is my zone of genius? Where am
Yeah.
I feeling fulfilled? And that can be different than that shiny want that we are told we should want. So backtracking before I forget, you talked about how when you came to your parents to tell them you were leaving, you weren't seeking permission. You were telling them, this is what I'm doing. And I think that's so important for people who have to make a big life transition or they're choosing to make this big life transition and the fear of what other people will think. You have to get so grounded in yourself and know your own true desire, be tapped into your intuition before you go to everyone else who is choosing to live a much different life from you, right? Unless it's someone you really trust who is completely happy and fulfilled and has the kind of lifestyle that you want, then don't be going to them for advice, right?
100%.
And just realize that you have to trust yourself. And when you go to tell the people that you love in your life, because the people that you love are not all necessarily going to understand when you are convicted in your decision. If they really love you, they'll come along with that. But when you come into it wavering and unsure, like I'm thinking about doing this, what do you think, or looking for that permission or confirmation or validation, and they are in a completely different mindset, it's just going to bring in more confusion or disrupting your path or discouragement. And so I love that you shared that you came in after I already made the decision. And so that's why he was able to step in with support because he could see how convicted you were that this is the right thing for me. So
Exactly.
very powerful how you navigated all of that. So you're talking about how you really want to focus on combining all of these different passions that you're stepping into the whole self care and starting the podcast, but you also have a business consulting business as well. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I actually don't do that anymore. I actually
What?
don't. I fully do this. I thought we talked about that, but yes, I pivoted. I think
No,
that's
I don't
honestly
think you
I
told.
pivoted.
Did you tell me
Yeah.
that?
Going back to what we talked about with intuition, it's such a full circle moment because you have really seen me just like from the jump and all of these things. And you've really helped me give me these tools and that space to think about these things and also just serving as a role model. I think I told you this years ago. You really were the first person I saw doing their own thing. When I left Meta, something that I learned through that experience was your intuition kind of like whispers until it doesn't. And my body literally took me out. I thought I had chronic fatigue syndrome. After I left, I couldn't even get out of bed for a month because my body just needed to rest. And so that was the start of just having my intuition guide me and what that looks like. And so the first thing that I did after was I made a plan and I went back to work for a couple months to save up and I was going to do business consulting. So essentially what I was doing at my job at Meta, but I would be doing it for myself because a big part,
Contracted.
yes, exactly. So I was nervous because there were so many parts of my job at Meta that I loved. And I think that at the time, that just seemed like the next step for me. I was like, okay, I'm going to build an agency, do all these things, scale it. And then once I scale it, then I really want to have my personal brand. And I started working on that. And there were times that I loved it, but I realized I didn't really like working with clients. And once I started working on my brand, I fell in love with that. And my plan was after I do this, then I'll work on my brand. And I realized, if money wasn't an issue, if I, could do what I'm just like scared to do, I think it helped me realize like, hey, this is actually what I really want to be doing. And I felt like all the dots kind of connected.
It was a
Yes.
false want and a true desire, right?
Yes.
Can I share a personal story as well? Because it
Yes,
totally aligns with
please. I
this.
have so many questions because I feel like you've gone through yep, you've gone through this journey as well, and so I'm so curious
Yes.
also. I'll let you tell this story, but then after, yeah, I'm so curious about you because I feel like in a lot of ways I'm really following in your footsteps. Well, I feel like I'm your little protege, and so I'm so curious how you left and you basically built this empire and you're so dynamic. I feel like you have so many things going on. And even my last year at Meta, I really saw you glow up and stepping into your power and all the transitions that you've gone through and growth. It was so inspiring. So, yes,
Thank
tell that
you.
story first, and then I have
You
my.
know what? It was a long journey of a lot of little steps along the way, but I'll tell you this one, and this is more my husband's story, but as partners and parents, it's our story, right? And you shared that you left Meta and you started this business consulting business, right? So you're now contracted, and that was the safe way to leave Meta. But over time, you realize this is a false want. My true desire is to step into this personal branding and a different type of work that really lights me up. And I want to share this story. I've shared it in groups before that I've spoken to, but my husband used to be a police officer when we were living in Hawaii, and that lifestyle was not really working for our family anymore. And it was a good income, especially for living on a rural island where there isn't a lot of job opportunities. It's a six-figure income to take care of our family of six, and he was gone a lot. His schedule was crazy. His stress and workload was impacting our family relationships. And I knew that it was never something he really wanted to do. It's just because he needed to provide for his family. He actually has a degree in sound design for film, and he is an audio engineer. And so before he became an officer, when I was working full time as a social worker, he had a home studio and he was doing video editing and recording music and things like that. That was more his passion. So police officer, totally completely different. And I was taking this money mindset course, and there was an exercise that we had to do about if there was something that we wanted to buy that seemed out of reach. And I was doing this exercise, I realized there's nothing I really want to buy that I truly desire that I can't get. But what I really want is for my husband to quit his job. And so I did this exercise, and 10 minutes later, I looked at it and I was like, holy crap, he could quit his job today if he wanted. We felt
Yeah.
so boxed in and trapped, but everything is figure outable, right? I just came up with all of these ideas or solutions. And so I started putting it in his ear. And this is early in 2021. And I kept telling him, what if you quit your job? And he's just like, you're crazy. What am I going to do? We have all these kids. And I said it long enough, and he desired it enough to believe into this crazy idea. And part of our backup plan was, one, I was going to start seeing therapy clients again because I was a therapist. And another part of it was there was an Amazon business that we had been working on, and it
Oh,
was private label. We had gone through this whole course, invested a lot of time and money into it while the whole past year that we had been working on it, maybe over a year. We had negotiated with manufacturers in China. We were getting our product. We had our own brand name and everything, created our design. We had gone through this whole long process. And so our plan was, okay, he's going to leave his job as a police officer. I'm going to take on therapy clients. We're going to rent out a car on Turo, which is like the Airbnb of rental cars, right? Like we had all these ideas, and he's going to work the Amazon business, which I had been slowly building on the side. Decided, okay, you're going to take it over now, because he was the one who had always wanted to start it to begin with. And it's because he wanted a backup plan to be able to leave the police
uh-huh.
job eventually, right? So that was our plan. The day after he quit his job, so it was probably within 3 months that I suggested, what if you quit your job? And that had not been on our radar at all. Then he left. He left his full time career. And the day after, we decided to go on a date to celebrate. And I think it was after dinner. We went to dinner, and then we went to the beach, and we went to the ocean, and we did what is called a hi'uvai in Hawaiian culture. And it's when you fully submerge into the water either early in the morning, like at dawn or at dusk. And it's with intention to cleanse and wash away old energies and the past and to start fresh. And so we did that. And I just got goosebumps thinking about that moment. And as we came out of the water, it's this really special moment. And then we got in the car, we're driving back home. And I looked over at him and I said, now what? Like, what are you going to do? You don't have a job anymore. And he said, what if we move to Atlanta? And in my mind, I was like, I do not want to do that, but I didn't want to ruin this beautiful moment we just had. So I said, I could be open to that. And why Atlanta? It's because I knew they had a big film industry there. So he had done some sound design editing for a guy who was flying back and forth between Atlanta and Hawaii because of the film industry. And that's how we first learned of it. And so when he said Atlanta, I knew before we had even moved to Hawaii, he wanted to move to LA to pursue film. And I was hard no, I never want to live in LA. And Atlanta is a little more cost friendly for families. But we had never been to Georgia. Didn't know anyone that lives there. It was so far, far away from where we were. And I was just so happy living in Hawaii. But for some reason, I couldn't stop thinking about it after that moment, and it felt really right. So that's where that intuition piece comes in. There's no logical reason for me to want to go there or for our family to move there, but I knew without a doubt that's one of the strongest impressions I had, we're supposed to go. And I remember telling him, this doesn't make sense. Like, why do I feel like we're supposed to go? And he was just nonchalant, like, because we're supposed to. Yeah. I'm like, no, because you want to, but I don't want to. And so what it actually was he wanted to pursue acting, not sound design, which he's done before. And I think at the time he was 39 and had never acted. Maybe he had done a commercial once in his early 20s before we ever met each other, but not really any acting experience. Okay. So for us to tell people we're moving our whole family across the ocean, across the country, so that he could be an actor after being a police officer at age 39 sounded completely insane. So we felt it was right within 3 months of him quitting his job and having this moment of, no, it was 4 months of him saying, what if we moved to Atlanta? We sold everything and moved with just some suitcases of clothes and our guitars and our kids. And we went across the country and just crossed our fingers that everything would work out when we got here. And he began acting, and he began doing really well in his acting. And he was so happy and fulfilled. But when we moved here, he was so focused on starting his acting classes, getting his headshots, auditioning for roles, and he was getting them, that the whole Amazon thing kind of fell on the wayside. And
Mhm.
he did not keep up with all of the business side of that, which was frustrating on my end. But we eventually came to a place where we had to decide, is it worth storing these anymore and paying all these fees to Amazon, or should we just kind of give up on the business because we're losing money? And it was a hard decision to make because we had invested so much time, so much money into this. We finally got everything ready to go and now we're not promoting it. It was hard, but just like you said, you've done so much work to set up your business consulting, right? And you had done so much work, but it's almost like we needed that false want to give us the courage to leave the job that wasn't right so that we did have the freedom and the relief of the stress to get clarity on what is it that I really do want. And so to not feel like it was a total waste. And today we have boxes of maybe like 1,600 kitchen towels in our garage that we did not sell on Amazon. So that can be like housewarming gifts for the rest of my life. But it was a stepping stone. It was a
Mhm.
stepping stone, and it wasn't a waste because we needed that courage and we needed to be able to tell my parents, oh, yeah, he's going to run an Amazon business instead of, oh, yeah, he's going to be an actor because that was a lot harder to tell people, right? And so now that we're here in this place, we knew that all of those things needed to happen. And while on the outside it may look flaky or like a waste of time or money, it was all of those necessary stepping stones to get you where you needed to be and also to get you in the right mindset or belief because we weren't ready to believe we could leave the job unless we had this backup plan, even though that wasn't going to end up being the real backup plan, right?
I
So that's
love
my
that
long
story.
story.
No, that's a perfect story. And it gives me so many goosebumps, not just even about intuition, but also just seeing your partnership with your husband and how it's honestly like a soul level kind of thing, just bringing that consciousness into each other's life. And I do the same thing where I've been with my partner for almost 6 years, and I feel like I'm always manifesting things for him. Like I'm manifesting abundance, and then yesterday he got a random check from insurance from months ago from this dispute. Um,
That's amazing.
but you guys trusting each other and wanting the best for each other and allowing him to just be himself and trusting that things will work out. Aside from just talking the talk, I think it's amazing how you guys actually are walking the walk. You're not just telling me to follow my intuition, you're following your intuition. And I think about those stepping stones, that's something that I'm just even going through today with like trusting my intuition because it just will always get louder. And even to this day, I'm always asking myself almost every day, what is my intuition telling me? What am I resisting? Because I don't even think it's the idea of like a false desire. I feel like it's even your intuition is guiding you towards something for a reason. Even if it doesn't work out exactly how I thought it was
Yeah.
going to be, it's leading me to something even better. Like with my business consulting agency, again, one of the reasons why I even got the awareness of, hey, this isn't even what I want to be doing was I think it was your Soul Threads video. It was about how, you took the course and then you made your Instagram account because I didn't want to be on Instagram for so long. And yeah, it made me more confident. And I think it just showed myself that, yeah, I can do this because I was kind of worried of what if I leave my 9 to 5 and that was the only motivation I had to work. And then if I'm working for myself, what if I can't show up if it's for myself? And, I learned how to make a business, set up an LLC, exactly a lot of those things that you
Yeah.
mentioned in that. So I love it's such a good reminder to myself even today when I feel my intuition pull called towards some things where my logical brain is like, why? And just knowing, hey, it will work out. Even if it's not what I think it will, something even better will come.
Yes, and to not beat yourself up over it not working out the way you thought it was,
Mhm.
and trusting that that's all it needed to be, and that
Yeah.
it served a purpose in your life and it was worth it, instead of lingering on, I shouldn't have done that, I wasted my time, I wasted my money, all of that
Mhm.
is just keeping you stuck in the past instead of trusting that that needed to happen just the way it did, and now it helped me to gain the confidence and skills to do this thing, which is
Exactly.
really more aligned. I think that's so important to remember.
Yes, I had that conversation with my partner because we share a home together. We are planning our future together. And he had been asking me normal updates like, how's my business going? And doing all these things to support me and help my business. And so I had to tell him, like, hey, I'm actually not going to be focusing on this anymore. I want to focus on my podcast and just building my brand. And, initially I was like, well, I can just freelance and work on this. And he was like, no, it's better to just like work towards that. And it was really nice because even I was like, well, what if it's a fad? I just tried this one thing and then I didn't like it. And now I'm doing this. This is what I love now. So I'm so curious, when you made the initial jump towards what you're doing now, what was that process like? How did your husband
Ooh.
handle that?
Stepping into coaching. It was a slow transition because for a while I was seeing both therapy clients and coaching clients, but I have been taking business courses, coaching courses consistently for several years. So I'm building my mindset, right? And my husband's always like, "Okay, so what are you going to do with that now?" And I would say everything that I have learned and experienced in all of the things I've invested in over the past 5 years have absolutely brought me to where I am today. And it's not perfect. I don't think I'm at the pinnacle of success. I'll tell you, this journey of trusting your intuition and taking the less traveled path is very difficult in a lot of ways. And it's living on a prayer in a lot of ways and just trusting that it's going to work out. But for me, I realized that I needed to free up the time and energy and the mindset that was keeping me in therapy so that I could fully step into coaching. And they're two different mindsets and they're different types of relationship. And so if I wanted my coaching to grow, I had to let go of that. And that it was scary. There are times when I'm like, should I just go back and take a bunch of therapy clients? But I don't want to do that. And actually, what I had to do as I was building up my coaching clients was I had to decide I could start a private practice and get paid pretty well for my one on one therapy clients, or I could just jump onto a platform like BetterHelp where they throw me a bunch of clients, but I get paid way less. And it doesn't seem like it's worth my time and energy. But I made that sacrifice because I was playing the long game. It
Mhm.
wasn't about the money I needed right now. It was, I don't want to start a whole practice because I know that's not my end role. And it takes like 6 months even to get credentialed with insurance companies. Honestly, one of the biggest motivators for me to do coaching instead of therapy is that I don't have to do assessments, treatment plans, and progress notes.
Yeah, sometimes it's like, why make things harder for yourself than it needs to be?
Yes, and proving yourself to insurance companies who don't always pay you out or take months to pay you back, and I don't wanna do that. I don't wanna do that, and I enjoy coaching, and I have a different energy in the clients that I work with, and so deciding that I'm gonna make these small sacrifices in the interim where maybe I'm making less money or doing things in a way that don't seem as smart for my time, but it was more of freeing up my mental energy so that I could build for the long game,
100%. I
right?
know exactly what you're talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
I even have those conversations with my partner now where I'm like, I will do anything to make this work because I know what I'm building is for longevity and I'm playing the long game. And I tell him, if I had to dog walk, like anything I will find a way to make ends meet. You will see me outside walking 20 dogs at a time. Like I will figure it out because when you're playing that long game and when you have a dream, like I think the rest is like fine. It doesn't matter if you're working, if I'm working like 100 hours a week or something crazy to make the ends meet, but I'm doing that because I know I have a goal and things will be better.
Yes.
It is all worth it.
Yeah. That this is just a season of grind, right? And we're
Yes.
doing something, it's not forever, but it has meaning attached to it when you know this isn't the 9 to 5 I'm gonna be trapped in for 40 years. It has a different energy, right?
I have
Yeah.
like two questions. So the first thing, more of just a comment. I don't know where I'm going with this, but
I love being
is your
interviewed on my own podcast. This is new.
Well, I loved Charlie's where he was asking you questions, and I learned so much about you from that. And I don't know, I'm waiting for you to write a book. I love these stories. The first thing, more of just a random comment, but one of the things that you've like modeled without even realizing, and you can see it. So I'm in one of your group coaching things, and me and another person in our class, a lot of the people in our class are married, but me and Charlie, we're always like, oh, I think sometimes you think it's like easier to go towards success and people think you have to choose between like love and partnership. I feel this way for sure. My partner is my number one supporter. Being able to be my authentic self and feel confident, it really kind of starts at home. And instead of just one person with my partner, I feel like I'm like 10 people. And so I think that's something you kind of modeled that I love.
What do you mean by that? Tell me more about that. I'm not sure
I
I'm
feel like when you're
grasping it.
one person, you're one, but when you're two, you're like 10 people. I do
Mm,
not have a doubt in my mind that I would not be where I am without my partner. And one of the things that I've been thinking about lately and reflecting on my journey is in the past, I was really weird about kind of like relying on people. But like my partner and I are such a team. And like I love those stories, how you share about like you going after your dream and your partner, and I think we're just like so much stronger as like two people. And when you have a partner that sees you, supports you, my partner will just, he just lets me be myself and do, kind of whatever I want and just like supports me. And he's really supported me on this journey. And now it's so cool and interesting to see. You've helped to redefine what's possible for me. And now I think some of this is rubbing off on him a little bit. He did his 50 dreams. He's rethinking his possibilities and even just little things. I think the day to day, having that confidence and support and being able to show up authentically with him allows me to show up authentically with other people and get my cup filled so that I can pour into this, pour into myself. Even just little things like how we manage our household and things like
yeah,
that. Having a partner is such a big plus where
absolutely.
sometimes you think you have
Absolutely.
to be single and you have to have all that time, and, like,
Mhm.
relationships do take time also, but it is something that,
You can
I definitely
accelerate
wouldn't
each
be
other.
100%. I would not be where I
Yeah.
am, I think, without him.
Can I just speak to that before you move on?
Yes.
Because I love that you see that from the outside. Because our relationship has been rocky. Any long-term relationship is not easy. It will be the hardest thing you do in your life to make it work, and especially with
100%.
raising children and coming from different cultures, and we are completely different from when we first met each other, and allowing ourselves to grow into our new selves and grow together has been such a journey. It is not easy, and so I don't want everyone to think, "Oh, it's wow,
100%.
they're the amazing power
Yes.
couple." Because I'm big on authenticity. I always would tell myself, the reason I know that he's right for me is because I like who I'm becoming with him.
I
Even though
tell
he
myself
even though he gives me hell and, maybe he could soften his feedback and his delivery or whatever it is, all of our conflict that comes up, I am a million times better today than the person who first met him 15 years ago. And he saw the good and the potential in me and gave me a chance, and vice versa through each other. And he is completely different person from even a year ago, let alone 5 years ago, 10,
100%.
15 years ago. And so seeing that progress, that I like who I'm becoming, that's a good indicator. Because we so often hear the label of like this toxic relationship. And I don't love that, because relationships are not black and white. And all of us, every single person has a few toxic tendencies. Okay. We are not 100% completely healed. Even me as a trauma therapist and life coach, like I am toxic sometimes and I am doing the work to heal. And so when we label a relationship as like, oh, that's so toxic, it's like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean we should end it? No, it means maybe we can learn to navigate things a little bit better and we have more healing to do, but it doesn't mean you need to get a divorce or break up with him. It means, okay, how can we level up and change this behavior that's not benefiting us, or change this interaction that's not benefiting us, and work to grow together? And how do I know if this relationship is good for me or not? Who am I becoming in it? And do I like who I'm becoming? Right. So I love that you saw that from the outside, and 100%, it made me value my husband more, because he absolutely is on board with everything I do. He's my biggest cheerleader, and he will take all the kids, all 5 kids, for several days while I go for a work trip, and I'm going on retreats and I'm going to speak at conferences. And he never complains about it. He's just always on board. And there have been times when I've supported him, being pregnant, working till late, doing auditions with him at 2 in the morning, and I am grouchy, and we've had so many fights over doing late night auditions, but I'm still gonna show up and do it? And so you're right, having a partner that's on board and supportive is absolutely gonna accelerate you in your dreams. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yes, and one of the things that you told me as my partner and I have been thinking about getting married, and I had a fear of everything's great right now, and we've been together for 6 years, and even just seeing as we both evolve, I feel like I've seen this is like the 3rd time where we've kind of had to get to know each other again, and also going through those ebbs and flows, we kind of talk about where we're at, how much energy, like 0 or 100, because there have been times where I'm supporting him. It's been a couple of months and his job is super stressful and I'm like taking care of everything around the house. And there's also been times where he's like pulling a lot more weight on his end. And so
Mm.
I ebb and flow of like being cared for and like caring for someone. And
Yeah.
then I also saw something recently about how the point of love and relationships isn't for them to make you happy. It's to bring consciousness and awareness.
Mm,
And I feel like I see that.
totally. They shine a mirror on all of your places that you still need to heal, right?
And my last thing is I'm so glad that I'm doing the work. And I feel like a lot of the things with goals are really on the inside. Like, what do I need to embody to show up as this person? For example, right now for me, it's a lot of mindset of being a leader and leadership. And how can I figure out my leadership style and get more comfortable with like what I bring to the table. But I will listen to podcasts sometimes of people who are so successful. And as I'm thinking about the kind of life that I want and what success means to me, I will hear people who are at the top of their field and I can just tell that their nervous system is so dysregulated. They'll be talking
Mm.
about fight or flight or talking about just all these rules they're making for themselves about their experience with love of you have to choose love or your career or everyone will want something for you or you can't be with a partner if you're
Ew.
successful that's happy for you and that will support you. And
People are out there really believing that crap?
no,
That's
literally, it
so
makes me so
sad.
sad. No, right? And so it is just a reminder when I hear those things of like, that's why it's important to do the work within yourself because yeah, I do
Yeah.
see those things. And it feels crazy and like such a radical thing to say to be like, you can have a partner who is supportive of you. Even if you're a woman and you are like, doing a lot more exciting, cool things. Like there are
Even
men
when you
out
have
there
5 kids?
yeah. There are men out there who will be a true partner and supportive. I do think relationships not perfect. He annoys me all the time. We disagree about things, but you know, he loves me, he supports me, and so I do think it's also nice to
And
just
we
show
help each other
people that
grow.
it's possible. Yeah, that you can find
Yeah.
someone who, you know, can help you grow. So I like that a lot.
Thank you for bringing that aspect in. I think that's a beautiful topic to touch on and to help people realize you can have that. You can have both. And that's one of the things my sister coaches on a lot. It's not either or. It's not the career or love. It's not the kids or whatever the dreams. It's I get to have both. And that's the limiting belief is I have to choose between it. So thank you for sharing that. This has
Yeah.
been so good. And we went a lot longer than I had
Yes.
planned to, but it had to happen because it was so good. And actually my husband is always telling me, your episodes need to be longer because they end and I want more. And in my mind, I don't want people to get bored. So I try to keep it short. He's like, no, I feel like I want more. So we're
Do you
on
have
our
time
way.
for one more question?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Let's go.
okay. So I mentioned before about this season. You know my goals for the season, the things I'm working on. And as I've reflected on them and thought about the difference between my highest version and me and what are the things that I kind of, you know, aside from the external projects and stuff, a big thing that came up for me was I'm already a leader in a sense. Everyone's a leader. And something that I really wanted to work on and I'm working on in this season is around worthiness. For example, just I'm
Mm.
enough, letting go of that hustle culture, and also around leadership. So what's my leadership style? Learning about that, learning what makes a good leader to me, my experiences that I can bring. And I think that is something that I'm excited to like learn about and embody and like really help take me to the next level and be more confident because I do want to be an example to people and show like, wherever you are from, what your life looks like right now, you're not stuck, like you can change. And so I'm so curious for you if there has been any mindset shifts that you've had.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you really have seen yourself embody and step into as you've grown, because I've seen a huge transformation on my end.
It was incremental. It was incremental change. And I would say the things that really helped me first, I was a completely different person 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I started this journey maybe 6 years ago. I didn't have goals or dreams. I was negative a lot. I was overwhelmed, burnt out. I did a lot of Netflix binging. I didn't believe I could ever have wealth. Like I was just completely
Like
different. I had
relinquish.
so many limiting beliefs and just thought this is my life. We're just
Mhm.
here for the ride and whatever.
Which is so relatable. We've all been there. And like through
Yes.
different moments, like it happens where you are just almost like relinquishing to life. Like you're
Yeah.
relinquishing your power. Yeah.
And maybe there are people listening to this saying, like, that's my life. It's not that bad, whatever. That's where I'm at. And I remember seeing other people and thinking, I could never have that. That's just not me. And my sister had actually started her personal development journey a little before me and got into coaching. And I thought she was crazy. I was like, okay, that's delusional. And then I got started with this online entrepreneur group. And I remember having a hub with them. My cousin invited me into this, and it was actually network marketing, which okay, talk about intuition. I prayed about it several times and felt I was supposed to do this, and everything in me did not want to do it. But I trusted it, and I received this answer when I was pondering, praying about it. However, your spirituality aligns when you're trying to seek answers. And the answer that came to me was, even if all you get from this is to learn to not care what people think, it'll be worth it for you. And I was like, okay, so I'm supposed to do this thing I really don't want to do. There's a lot of shame around this, right? And so I started stepping into this, but we had business meetings and I was around these people who had big dreams and they would share their dreams. And I was like, these people are crazy. What are they talking about? But that was the start of my personal development journey. And I started reading and I started listening to uplifting motivational speeches and podcasts and audiobooks and getting around people who were doing things. So that was one thing, is changing my mindset by educating myself to different philosophies and thought processes that I had never even considered. So definitely your environment, if you can't get around people in your circle that can influence you in that way, there is the internet. There's so many resources out there to start listening to your favorite people, listen to the audiobooks, read the books, like get the knowledge that's out there so that you can start shifting your mindset. And with every chapter I read, I was shifting into a new person. And so the other piece of that was getting out of my comfort zone because I was just a really reserved, kind of shy person. I mean, I have my moments of being out there, but I remember in 2021, when I first started this Instagram account, I impulsively had the idea to do this challenge of 100 days of facing fears. And so I did 100 things.
Intuitively.
Yeah,
Intuitively.
intuitively, I was like, I'm gonna dye my hair gray because I always wanted to do that. And so I thought today should be my first day of doing something facing a fear. And so I posted about it, and that's kind of where people started following me or noticing, what is Sarah doing? She's different, right? And I just started doing things that were out of my comfort zone, and it could be learning a new thing, like learning how to free dive in the ocean or playing at an open mic, or it was May Day in Hawaii where you give leis and you make leis. And so I made a flower lei and I gave it to a stranger in the Walmart parking lot. And I just felt really awkward about it, but I was like, I'm going to go up to them and be like, hey, would you like a lei? And I gave it to them. And it was just like to do things that were really uncomfortable. That's the whole point of it. So facing fear. So some of them were silly, some were big. And that was a huge transformation for me to get used to the discomfort, which I still do today in my business, in my growth. Every day, I'm doing things that are uncomfortable, reaching out to people, sharing my message, posting podcasts and Instagram posts, getting on stage and speaking. So that was really a big piece of my transformation as well, is normalizing discomfort. So changing your mindset, normalizing discomfort, and then doing the deep healing work. And I have done trauma work to change and heal and remove layers. And actually, around the same time I started this personal development journey where I was introduced to the business world, I had just done some deep trauma work that had really helped to shift me out of this victim mindset. And I think that was a huge catalyst for me to be ready to step into this new era as well. And the work continues. So actually last night I was feeling emotional after a group coaching session I was a part of yesterday with our coach, Rudy Ricksteins. And I knew that I needed to sit and do some deep work because usually I'm so busy. I'm like, go, go, go. I don't have time to sit and do this. And yet I help everyone else with their
Mm-hmm.
inner child and their work. And the triggers will pop up, but I'm like, I'm so busy. And yesterday I knew the emotions are coming up. I've got to sit with this. And so it was late at night before bed. And I just processed, and I would do it similarly as I would do EMDR or inner child work on someone else. And I did it on myself. I sobbed for like a good 40 minutes. If I look really tired today, that's why. And it was like all of this stuff that I had to release in my worthiness and the am I good enough? And there's still more work to do, but that's a huge part of the transformation. And you can't ignore it. You can do all the affirmations and the visualizations and the meditations and the mindset work. But if you don't go back and heal the root of your subconscious patterns, they're always going to come back to bite you. And so to sit with that and do the deep emotional healing and the inner child work and remove those layers so that you can get back to your true self and your most powerful self, that's a big part of it. So I hope that answers your question in a
Yes,
really
no,
long
it's
way.
so beautiful. It's so crazy hearing you talk about these things. And as you're talking, like, I really want to have you on my podcast. I've never had a guest before, but everything that you've said, I mean, even back to the beginning with like relinquishing your power, that's how I felt before a year and a half ago when we started coaching and changing your environment. I mean, our group coaching is really what gave me a place to show up differently and meet people with the same mindset to express
Yes.
that part of me. And of course, you've helped me so much with all of these healing things. And I feel like once I heal some of these wounds, like whatever one of my inner child is going through at some stage, once I'm able to kind of get under the like grief and heal that part, I'm also able to get like recover a lot of the gifts and like the dreams of
Yeah.
that part, you know? So I think that's like so
Yes.
beautiful.
It goes hand in hand. And a lot of those gifts or dreams, or even the happy memories too, and the empowered memories are stuck under layers of that grief. And then when you allow yourself to just feel that grief and process it, you're like, oh, there's actually a bunch
I
of
need to
jewels
have
under here
I
too.
need
Yeah.
to have you on my podcast. That's something
Let's
like
do
after
it.
this, I really want to coordinate that because even hearing you say going after comfort and how you show up on my side, I see you showing up. I see your group. I see your coaching, your Instagram, all of these things. And to me, you look like you have it all together. So even when I hear those things, sometimes I have to stop and remember, like when I'm going through stuff and putting myself out there, I have those thoughts of like, hey, even like Sarah has felt this way sometimes. And
All the
never crosses
time.
my mind. It never crosses my mind. Yes, and yeah, you've played such a huge part of my journey.
Thank you. Thank you. And you've played
I
such
have
a
so
huge
many questions.
simultaneously, you have played such a huge part of my journey because in this game, I don't know who cares. I don't know who wants my help or to hear from me or who's going to join anything that I put out there. And by you stepping up and saying, yes, I want this, it has given me the belief to keep going. And you know, with this group that we currently have, Return to Self, there are 8 members in it who are amazing. I love the energy in this group. I think I've run like 7 groups so far, and this one is the most interactive, the most vulnerable and talkative in the group chat, on the sessions. And I almost didn't start this group. When we were finishing the One Life to Live 12-week group, typically what I've done in the past is, okay, whoever wants to go on to Return to Self can. But because I was doing this retreat that I'm launching, I had other things going on, I thought maybe I shouldn't even worry about filling this group
I was like,
again.
please, please do it.
Again, I dropped into my intuition and it was like, you need to do this group. And I was like, I don't want to,
That's
but
the
I'm gonna.
craziest thing. That's the craziest thing is like if you don't already realize what an impact and how much you've changed people's lives, like literally it changed my life. And I can say the same. I see it in the people in our group, you know, I see the growth and we literally call you Sensei Sarah because it's crazy this gift you have and kind of genius of just being able to pour into other people and just I can't even articulate what you do, but it's such a gift. Which is
Thank
why
you.
I need you on my podcast. I have so many
I will be
questions.
there.
Hearing like the behind the scenes of like what's going on is crazy because you're like a celebrity to me.
You're
Yes, I don't
so
know if you know,
funny.
but you're
Stop
literally like
it.
a celebrity to me. Yes. So
But
yeah,
yeah, behind the scenes, that's the reality, Delilah. Behind the scenes, I'm questioning every move and I'm like, do I want to do this? This is hard. Should I go through it? And I want people to realize that when you are pursuing something worthwhile and meaningful, and even though you know with all your heart this is what you should be doing, it is freaking hard and it's beautiful and it's worthwhile and it's all the things. But don't think that because challenges comes up that maybe I shouldn't be doing this. because every launch I question myself, and I am so glad that I have come into the pattern of trusting my intuition and saying, okay, I'm supposed to do this. I did it. And this group has been incredible. And so I can't believe not having done this group, right? So that's part of the journey. But I will say the self-doubt that never goes away. It's just part of the process. It just means you are leveling up and getting out of your comfort zone, right?
And
Thank you
that's
so much for being here. This was so good.
I
To
need to
be
come on again.
continued.
Yes, I was gonna say I need to come on again in like a year and just see. I'm sure the change between both of us is going to be like huge.
Yes, we're gonna be
So
doing totally different things by then.
thank
I
you so
love
much
it.
for having me. This was like
Yes,
amazing. I could sit and yap all day. I need
I
you on my
know. This is
podcast.
so fun. Where can our listeners find you so that they can stay in touch?
Yes, I'm glad you asked. So my podcast is The Self Care Diaries. So you can find me there. I upload like once every week. And then we also have a community on Instagram, which is just Delilah's Self Care Diary, where I post all the things that I'm into. So, yes, I would love for everyone to come check it out and come say hi.
Yes. And I'll include the links in the show notes. And to end our episode, what is a dream that you have that maybe not many people know about?
That is a very good question. I would say probably writing a book or doing speaking engagements. I think those are similar in the sense of just want to keep spreading the message that I feel you've given to me, just a message of hope to
Yes.
college students, to people who like corporations, people who are working at Meta. Like, hey, there's more to life and,
There's
don't be
another way
afraid
you could
to
be
live.
doing this.
Exactly. No matter what point of life you're in. I've been there from being first generation college student with debt, not sure how I'm going to get a job after college, to working at, one of the best companies in the world, to starting my own thing, to then being like an influencer. Yeah, just kind of spreading that message and just serving as an example of like, hey,
Sharing your
it's
story.
possible. And if you don't have anyone to talk about it with, that's why we have this table, this community. So come on in. Come on in. It's good.
Yes.
So that's my
I
little
love
dream.
it. I believe you're going to do all those things. You are going to be speaking. You are going to write the book because whatever you put your mind to, you do it. And you're such a powerhouse. And so I'm
Yeah.
excited to see all the things you create. Thank you
And
so much, Delilah.
the universe only puts those desires in our head for a reason. So I feel like
Yes.
whatever we're dreaming of, whatever we want to do, it's already ours. So I know it will come. Is there a dream that you're working on that no one knows that you can share?
I wouldn't say no one knows because our Return to Self group knows, but on my podcast, I will announce that I am working on putting a band together again after not singing with a band for over 10 years. And I've only maybe gigged like twice in the last 10 years, just acoustic by myself or with my husband. But I really want full band and to get on stage and sing and have fun with music. So that is something exciting that
Now
I
it's
dream
out
of
there.
and working on. It's out
Well,
there.
now it's
So
out there. And when we have our in a year from now on the podcast, we are going to bring up these clips and we'll have to see
yeah.
where you're at. So,
Then we'll
yes.
talk about the gig that I had and the book that you're working on. Awesome. Thank you, Delilah. Thank you so much for being here.